Louisiana Beer Reviews looks at Grape Scott. Grape Scott is a beer from Blue Moon, in other words, Molson Coors. It's part of their graffiti collection, which was introduced in 2014, and they made 4 different sort of like one-shot beers. The Tongue-Tied, the Pine in the Neck, the Chimp, and now Grape Scott. It's a wheat ale, 100% wheat, with Chardonnay grape juice. And there's a little story about the brewmaster from Blue Moon going over to France and blah blah blah. Okay, now you can read that on their website. 9% alcohol, but with only 2 international bitterness units. I could get it off without the bottle prior. All right, a lot of smoke here. You can hear that electric heater going because it's 25 degrees outside. It's only going to get up to about 42 today. It's cold. Now, sunny though. I'm going to go walking. You may or may not see this. I don't know. It, like they say, it's been retired, but it was produced for that purpose. They were just going to make them, and then they may bring it back. Some other new ones that I haven't tried is the Blue Moon Cinnamon Horchata Ale. Bought this yesterday in the winter collection. It was $14.99 for those. Here's a gingerbread spiced ale, which I've not tried either. I might do a Blue Moon Revisited. Okay, well, this is the first video review for this beer in the world. What does Beer Advocate say about it? Well, there's only 1 review, so they're not saying much. No score. What does Rate Beer say about it? Not much. There's only 2 reviews. So this beer is not well covered. It's probably not even well available, or widely available. I've only seen it in a few stores. Okay, and then they had their vintage collection, which was all the beer wine hybrids, and I drank one of those. It improved as we drank it down, but at first impression, me and my daughter and myself didn't like it. Powdery sediment, gold, not much head. Looks like beer, kind of like a pale ale, really. It's a wheat ale. It smells very citrusy. A little bit like grapes, like candy. Like some kind of hard candy, Jolly Rancher type thing. Not a candy I really like to eat. You can pick up some alcohol there at 9%. And white wheat bread. Like I say many times in videos, it's like that brand of bread, white wheat bread, which is distinctive like these beers. It's not a bad aroma, it's just a weird, strange, odd, peculiar aroma, if you get where I'm going with that. This tastes like a Jolly Rancher, I'm telling you. I don't even like to eat Jolly Ranchers, much less drink them. But, hey, they're trying something different. Like my daughter said, she said, I'm not going to really pick on it because they're just doing different things. So, and that's the beer world today. I mean, the beer geeks, the beer so-called aficionados, the hipsters, whatever, they're not going to just drink a lager beer. I mean, unless it's Pabst Blue Ribbon. Maybe that's dying out, that trend. But even if it's a great lager beer like Stout O'Brien or Pilsner Urquell, they're not, they got to have, everything's got to be a gimmick. Everything's got to be Happy Days with Mork and Mindy, right? Or, I'm sure, sorry, Mork from Ork. Mindy didn't come in until the spin-off series. But it can't just be regular. It could be for me. But if you're going to compete in this convoluted beer culture today, you've got to come out with these wanky, off-kilter, and probably even the guy, they had the big article about Boston Brewing Company, Jim Koch, or Cook, or Coke, or however you're supposed to say it, Koch. He was complaining and whining a little bit and all, saying, oh, I got to produce beers I don't even like, and products I don't even like Twisted Tea and all that. But a lot of the bed he's lying in, he made himself. But I mean, I have semi-sympathy for him, but it's, if he doesn't produce that stuff, then he goes under. And Anheuser-Busch, InBev, SAB Miller, and Molson Coors has got to produce it. And then one day, probably years from now, that'll all wash away, and we'll look back and say, remember how kind of bad beers had gotten? The mouthfeel is light to medium, and the finish is champagne dry. The Chimp was really good. That had a full weedy flavor. I mean, that got better as I drank it. It started good and it got better. The Tongue Tied was really nice. The Pine in the Neck was a really good IPA, I have to admit. This one is probably the worst of the four. It's not good. It is, I give it a C. It's average. If you see it, and chances are you won't, it's up to you if you want to get rid of some money for not much return. Talking about, we're not talking about it, right? But I like to show these old retired beers. Talking about retired beers. Here's another one that was retired in 2005, 10 years ago. Meister Brau. A much better beer than this. Much cheaper too, because you could probably buy a 6-pack back in 2005 for $1.99. But Meister Brau was a very old brand from Chicago. I think it had been around since the 1890s, maybe 1890. It was a small company that started to falter, and then Miller bought them, and Philip Morris bought them in 1972. And at first they just had the Meister Brau beer, premium draft beer, which it wasn't really a draft beer, so later on they dropped that. They'd say draft style, but they claimed it was a draft beer. It really wasn't until '85 when they came out with cold filtering that they had true draft, packaged draft. But anyway, they're claiming it. But and it says there, Miller Brewing Company. So this is a 1978 Miller version of Meister Brau. But they had continued that recipe, which was sort of old time. Then they decided that maybe it was a little too old time for people, probably a little too roasty and bitter. IBUs were probably a little too high. So they came out with their 1983 formulation of Meister Brau, the Miller recipe, and then later with Meister Brau Light. And this was their bottom of the barrel beer. You see the guy drinking it on a Christmas vacation. Drinking it, in the 6 in the morning when he's cleaning out the camper. I thought it was a good beer. We never saw this around in Louisiana. I came maybe once I saw it, but I bought this on US Highway 1 in Connecticut in 1996. We were driving through and we stopped and we went to this beer store and they had all these exotic beers, and we bought Meister Brau, and the clerk looked at us like, pathetic. But I wanted to try it, so we had a good time drinking it and traveling. But it just was too grandpa, so it died out and they didn't promote it really after the mid-'80s, so they discontinued it. Also, the problem was that it was competing directly with Milwaukee's Best, right? Which was another old company that they bought in 1961, Gettleman. a Milwaukee company, and they brought this out as their own formulation in 1984. So they had two ultra budget beers sort of cannibalizing each other. I guess they realized, so they, as this grew in prominence, this was de-emphasized and later killed off. I used to call this alcoholic beer, you know, for the old alcoholics that couldn't afford anything, they would buy it. But actually it was pretty good for standardized American beer. So this one's still going sort of strong. It's going pretty well for a beer that gets absolutely zero advertising attention. I think Milwaukee's Best is probably a little better than your average. Here's a 1998 can. American style lager, because like Falstaff and Meisterbrow, it's a little roastier, and it's something about how they roast the barley malts. And some people have a, you know, they'll say it's nasty when it's just relatively different, not appreciably different. It's warming and it's slightly better, but it's inferior to Meisterbrow and Falstaff and Milwaukee's Best. But anyway, it's a different animal. Thank you for watching this video production. Y'all come on down to New Orleans.